Christian Parenting.
Hi, Deborah. Welcome back to the Christian Parenting Podcast. You've been here one time before, we think about 2 years ago. You've written multiple books since you've been on, including a
Yeah.
kid's book, which we're going to talk about. So for people who don't know you or kind of what your backstory is, tell us just a little bit about you and yourself. Tell us about your family and then what you do.
Yeah. My name's Debra Fileta, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. So that's my day job. But I'm also a wife and a mom of 4. I have a child in each stage of life right now. I have a toddler, elementary schooler, middle schooler, and high schooler. We're also a homeschooling family, which means the kids are home pretty much all the time. And I work from home. And so we just get a lot of time together, and our lives are just so intertwined. So it's such a rich season, currently, but also a demanding season. I'm an author of actually 10 different books.
Wow.
And this is my first children's book called Any Day Emotions. So, it's been a really fun season.
Yeah, a busy season.
A busy
That's
season, a full
like a lot.
season.
Full. I know. Sometimes I feel like you hear the word busy or people say that and you're like, but it's not bad. Like it's a good busy,
Yeah.
at least
You
I
know,
think.
I'll tell you this. It's some of the things in this stage of life with 4 kids are inevitable, but we do work really hard to not be busy, to say yes to the things we need to say yes to and no to the things that we don't need to say yes to, and have boundaries and limits so that we can enjoy and savor and not be stressed all the time. So I
Yeah.
have to practice what I preach. So I try not to say I'm busy, because I always tell people that busy is not a badge of honor. And so I think having a full, rich life, but having a lot of boundaries is what kind of keeps us in a healthy zone.
Yeah. And we're talking about healthy families today. We're going to talk about emotionally healthy families, which I do think being busy and turning busy into competition, because I think you're right. That is definitely a thing that we do in today's culture, is just something that plays into being an emotionally healthy family. And
Absolutely.
yeah, like I love just the idea of focusing on emotional health in your family. So I guess just like, why is it important to focus on that, especially as Christian parents? And how do we or why should we have conversations about emotional health like early with our kids and often and focus on it?
Yeah. Emotions are such a valuable part of who we are. I
Yeah.
really think, especially as Christians, we underestimate the value of emotions, and maybe we even vilify emotions a little bit. Like, you
Hmm.
shouldn't have them. Why do you feel that way? How do you have faith instead of feelings? Like, we say things like this as if emotions are the enemy, when really they're a gift from God. Emotions are a valuable part of the quadrants, the 4 parts of who God made us to be. When Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, we want to look at that in quadrants. Heart is our emotional health. Soul is our spiritual health. Mind is our mental health, and strength is our physical health. And as parents, as humans, first and foremost, we want to make sure that each part of us is aligned with who God wants us to be emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. But a big part of raising healthy children is teaching them to align those parts of them with who God has called them to be. And when we ignore the emotional part, we're ignoring a big quadrant, a big part of who God wants them to be and how he wants them to function as healthy people. And
Yeah.
so it's a conversation for adults, first and foremost, that we then pass along to our children. And obviously, as a counselor, mental and emotional health are huge for me and for my family. So it's a really important topic.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you talk about it, because I do think it's true that we sometimes just like in Christian circles, especially, kind of brush over them and we say things like emotions are liars. And there's truth to that. Like we can't live by our emotions, but they are part of who God made us to be. And so
Right.
we have to talk about them and acknowledge them and work through them sometimes. I've said this before on this podcast, but I have some kids with some really big feelings. Big
Yeah.
feelers. And I think it's so beautiful the way that they feel things, and they're so empathetic, and they just care so much about people and the world. And I think they view things differently because they feel so deeply. And sometimes as a parent, I feel like I manage that really well and I help them work through all their emotions and identify things. And sometimes it's just straight overwhelming and
Yeah.
hard. So let's start with like, what encouragement would you give to an overwhelmed parent whose child does struggle to manage emotions sometimes?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's important for us to define emotions as signals. Emotions are a signal that God has given us to cause us to pay attention to something. That's the first part of emotions. The second part is emotions are a signal that God has given us to encourage us to connect with someone, whether that's God, whether that's myself. I have to connect with myself, what's going on inside of me, or to connect with others. So
Mm.
they're a signal to help us pay attention to what's going on underneath the surface, but they're also a signal to help us pause and connect. And when you see it that way, it's like emotions are a gift. Without emotions, we wouldn't have that signal. Now, for kids who are big feelers, when you think about a signal, for example, a fire alarm, that's a signal. It signals to you there's something going on that you need to pay attention to. But what if your fire alarm is too sensing? It senses too much. We currently actually have a fire alarm that every time I put something in the air fryer, nothing's burning. It just senses that there's heat, something's cooking, and it just starts to like go off. And it's been like this annoying thing in the family. We're like, be careful with the air fryer.
No chicken nuggets for you guys.
Exactly, because the alarm's gonna go off. So for some people, their alarm is too sensitive. It
Hmm.
senses too much, whereas others, their alarm senses way too little. It is turned way down, and they don't feel things until there's a fire.
Hmm.
Neither of those aspects are healthy or good. And we have to learn to turn up the dial or turn down the dial to a healthy place. So when we talk about things like feelings are not as important as faith, faith over feelings, don't trust your feelings. I think those apply when our feelings are overworking, over sensing,
Mm-hmm.
right? That
Yeah.
happens for many reasons. We could have underlying anxiety, which causes our nervous system to be on hyper alert. And so when anything happens, the alarm goes off, even if we're safe and secure, because our nervous system is functioning from anxiety. It could be underlying trauma. Our nervous system has underlying trauma. It could be developmental delays or disabilities or struggles. It could be neurological issues underneath the surface, like ADHD, that cause our alarm system to be over sensing. And I list
Mm.
those many different reasons because it's not always a cookie cutter answer of why one kid is over sensing.
Yeah.
I think of one of my children struggled with anxiety growing up. And for a couple different things, there's a couple different experiences based on natural wiring which caused the alarm system to be overactive. And so we'd have to talk through, okay, what is really going on? How do we turn the alarm down with healthy thoughts? And how do we get you to a healthy place so that you're not constantly feeling like you're triggered and scared and nervous about things? But then there's other kids whose alarm system is totally off. They don't like to feel. They don't want to feel. Feelings overwhelm them, so they just shut it
Hmm.
off. God wants our signal to be right in the middle, the healthy middle, not too much, not too little. Because if emotions are a signal and our signal's on mute, we can't pay attention to what God is calling us to pay attention to. We can't connect to people in healthy ways the way that God wants us to connect using our feelings. So that's why it's important for us to kind of have an understanding and awareness of what feelings even are to be able to
Hmm.
teach our kids. And honestly, this starts with conversations when they're really little. Any Day Emotions is a picture book that I would say for ages 3, 10 to sit them down and say, okay, here are the different feelings that happen inside of you, 13 different feelings. I think a first step is even learning to identify and name the signal because it's not one big signal. There's so
Right.
many different signals, and each of them point to a different thing that we can't pay attention to if we're not aware of what that feeling is. So,
Hmm.
learning how to name our feeling, acknowledge, okay, I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling worried. I'm feeling jealous. I'm feeling ashamed. Like, what are the different feelings? What are they signaling? And then once we can name them, we can help our kids start to unpack them and figure out what to do with those feelings.
Yeah. Well, and I think starting young is so good because sometimes we get our feelings mixed up. Like, sometimes my son will be like, "I'm just mad." I'm like, "Are you mad?" Or, like, "It sounds like you're feeling jealous." Like,
Right.
we kinda have these default that we go to because 'cause they're maybe easier to express or say.
You're absolutely right. The interesting thing about mad and anger is that in counseling and psychology, we say that anger is a secondary emotion. What that means is it's the emotion that comes up in any day emotions. Anger is the volcano because the pressure is building underneath the surface. Just like a volcano, the pressure builds, and the pressure is all these other emotions. I'm disappointed. I'm afraid. I'm hurt, but I don't know how to articulate that. So the pressure starts to build and build and build and build until it finds the point of least resistance and comes up like a volcano. And so what you did with your child is very good. It's like, okay, if anger is the emotion that's easiest to show, well, what's underneath your volcano? What's
Mm.
building up underneath? What was that pressure? One activity that I do with one of my boys who struggles with anger, he loves this volcano analogy. So he's always like, well, my volcano exploded. And then we talk about, okay, it exploded with anger, but let's talk through what was in that volcano. So he'll say, okay, well, when I woke up this morning, I went to get a waffle and my brother ate the last one. So that was 10% of the volcano. And then I went to get my schoolwork started for the day and I couldn't find my favorite pencil. And that was 20% of the volcano. And then my little brother took something that belongs to me and he didn't even say sorry. And that was 30% of my volcano. And he kind of like maps it out in percentages because it helps his brain figure out I was
Mhm.
sad, I was disappointed, I was hurt, I was offended. And then, mom, when you asked me to unload the dishwasher and I felt overwhelmed, that was the last 10% of my volcano. And then it all exploded. And it actually really has helped him to map it out. Okay, the volcano has exploded. What was underneath that? What could we have done differently? What did each percentage feel like? Where could we have tweaked? Where could we have stopped and asked for help or asked for an apology or been vulnerable? And it has really helped him to kind of begin to conceptualize what's actually happening underneath anger to the point where we were in the car recently and we'd had like a little bit of a argument, people were tense and my son acts, sometimes kids mimic you, right? So he's like, so what's everybody feeling? Let's go around and everybody share what they're feeling. And my husband's like, I'm feeling angry. And he goes, Dad, what's underneath that anger? We just had to look at each other and laugh because he is starting to pick up the things that are not his natural bent. His natural bent
Right.
is to be angry, but it's like now he's even talking us through, well, what's underneath that? Because he's starting to learn. And that started with conversations from when he was really, really little. So
Yeah.
now that he's a teenager, he's 13 now, and he's able to kind of start putting the pieces together for himself.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
what's
I
underneath
love
that volcano?
yeah, I love that too because, like, for the super visual kids, I feel like you could even, like, have a volcano. Like, just have a printable
Exactly.
volcano and they can draw it out,
Yeah.
like
Make layers, each
yeah,
layer of pressure. How much percent? What was it? What happened? What could we have done differently with that layer?
yeah.
Because each layer adds a component to it. And goodness gracious, don't we need that as adults sometimes when you get
I
to the
think
end of
yeah.
your day and you're just like, I am done. Okay, what was underneath that volcano? And what could I have done differently? And what if I was actually aware of that first layer of pressure, of disappointment? And then
Mm,
I was aware of the embarrassment. And then I was aware of the inadequacy. Like, if I dealt with each piece, would that have affected things? How could that have decreased the pressure so that I never got to the part where everything exploded?
yeah,
And so being able to just even model that for our kids, emotionally healthy families start with emotionally healthy parents. And I believe that is a great privilege and a great responsibility.
yeah,
Modeling it is more important than anything that we can do.
yeah. Okay, I wanna get to parents, but one follow-up question about kids first.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel like my kids are really good at expressing their emotions because we've practiced it too, probably not as well as you, but we have. And But then sometimes, especially as they get older, like as my kids are entering the tween and teen years, I feel like I can tell when they're keeping something in and, don't want to talk as much or be vulnerable like that. So what are maybe some like signs that emotions are being held inward or some things that parents can do to help draw that out in a healthy way without being the obnoxious parent?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's a lot to do with timing because sometimes when you're feeling the emotion the most is not the best time to talk about it
Especially
because it's
anger.
almost, especially anger, but it's almost like the emotions cloud your reasoning because emotions are coming from the part of our brain called the amygdala. And our logic part of our brain is called our cortex. So
Hmm.
when the amygdala is activated, it trumps the cortex, which means we're thinking from our emotional brain, not necessarily our logical brain. So if I'm trying to have a conversation with a child who is at the height of their emotional brain, 90% emotional brain, we're not going to get very far. So
Hmm.
I always think, okay, when would be a good time to talk about this is when the emotions have settled a little bit and then we can backtrack and say, hey, I noticed earlier today you were feeling, you seemed a little irritable. You were kind of rude to me a little bit earlier. I noticed that you were kind of quiet at the dinner table. What's going on? Is there anything you want to talk about? How are you doing? And spend time reviewing the film rather than in the moment trying to get something out of them because if it comes out, it's probably not going to come out in a healthy way. But
Mm,
to be able to help them later helps them the next time around. Like what I'm
yeah.
doing in hindsight is helping them for the future. So it can really be a good, hey, I noticed you were really irritated when you got home and what was going on there? Yeah, you're right. I just had a really bad day at school and then I came home and I felt overwhelmed by, you were asking me so many questions and I just started feeling overwhelmed and this is what was going on and they're more likely to take ownership. They're more likely to be able to identify it later and think through it later. So that's
Yeah.
what I would suggest. I would suggest in the moment, trying to make them comfortable and make yourself comfortable, knowing that this emotion is like a wave. And when it's at the peak of the wave, it's not the best time to talk through it. Rather, how do we get on a floaty together and ride this wave out? And then we can talk through it. So that's what I would say. Like, how do I make myself and them as comfortable as possible so that, hey, you want to drink a water? There could be some dehydration. Do you need a snack? It could be my body needs to come back down with a snack. Do you need a walk? Do you need a healthy distraction? And then we come together later. I think the part that we often don't do well is we try to talk about it in the moment and then there's an explosion and then we leave it. Or we don't
Mm,
talk about it in the moment and then we leave it. The key is going back to it and making sure that we review the film and process in hindsight, talk through it, and then we have lessons to take with us for the future.
yeah. I love that because I feel like the times that I handle things the worst is when one of my kids is having some big anger moment or some emotional meltdown, and then I try to fix it, and then they don't respond well to me, and then my volcano starts to get filled because I'm
Exactly.
annoyed.
Everybody's
I'm
volcano
like
starts exploding.
I'm like, "Excuse me, I'm doing this really well, and you're not responding to me." And then I
Yeah,
don't do it well anymore. So it just
exactly.
yeah, yeah, I love
Exactly.
that. A little
So
pause.
really, I guess the word stabilization. My goal is
Mm,
to stabilize everybody, to stabilize myself, to stabilize you. Job is to stabilize yourself. My job is to stabilize myself. As a parent, I can help you stabilize yourself as needed,
yeah,
making some suggestions. Hey, I'm noticing this. Why don't you? Would this be helpful? Would this be helpful? Would this be helpful? And maybe what's helpful is for mom not to say anything and just give me a little space. And that's fine too, but
yeah,
not permanently. I'm knowing that we're going to go back and we're going to review the film together and
yeah,
making that a habit and teaching your kids that, hey, that's important to me that we go back and talk through this. Just like if I were to explode on you and never come back and talk you through it, never share with you what was going on underneath the surface. We just leave these loose ends. When there is a rupture in a relationship, we need to seek out a repair. The repair just doesn't have to happen in the moment.
yeah. I love that language too of reviewing the film. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, especially for kids that like sports. My sons love football, and it's like that makes sense to them. Like, yeah,
Oh,
we do have
yeah.
to review the film because how are we going to get better?
Yeah. Well, you totally I was just thinking, like, my son's going to the film room tonight to review the film for football. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So that'll make sense to him. Yeah, and make it less, like, cheesy feeling maybe? I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
good. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving to parents then, kinda like you had led into before, like, what because like you said, so many kids pick up their emotional habits by watching their parents, and again,
Right.
no one does it perfectly, like, sometimes we totally mess up, sometimes we handle it well, but, like, what advice would you give to parents who feel like they need to do some work in order to model healthy emotions for their kids?
Yeah. It is such a good place to believe that you have work to do. I
Mm,
think that's a great place to be. It's such a humble place to be. It's such I am malleable. I'm saying, Lord, I want you to work on me. I want you to make me better. I want you to take me deeper. I want the next level of healing that you have for me versus, oh, I'm such a bad parent. I'm not good enough. Why do I keep messing up? Those thoughts are going to sabotage you. But being able to say, yeah, I want to lean into all that you have for me. I want to heal on a deeper level so that I can pass that down to my kids. That's a beautiful place to be. And so, I mean, the goal is that we're always on a journey of asking God to take us deeper. And I think part 1 starts with doing the work with a counselor, doing the work by reading. I have 3 good books for adults who want to do the work of emotional health in their personal life. Are You Really Okay? Reset and Soul Care. And I would say start with the work. Start with those books, doing the homework at the end of each chapter. One of the
mm,
books, Reset, talks you through like 31 different like practical emotional health concepts, taking you back to childhood and helping you unpack and process and deal with your emotions. For some people, it's going to require some work with a professional counselor. I think everybody should have 6 sessions at one point with a counselor to do work that they don't even think they have to do. And until you get there and you're like, okay, I'm starting to make these connections. What are these signals and what are they telling me? What do I need to pay attention to? Because sometimes the alarm is turned up or turned down because of things from our childhood.
mm,
And so having to kind of make those connections and heal is important. So, part A, yeah, absolutely do your work personally. Part B, review the film. When you do something wrong, when
mm,
you lose your cool, don't just move on and not acknowledge it. Take ownership because it teaches your kids to take ownership. Hey, mommy did not handle that in a healthy way. And I'm really sorry that I raised my voice at you because I was feeling frustrated at something else. And then when you disobeyed, it took my frustration to a level that I don't want it to go. And I didn't respond in a healthy way. And I'm really sorry. I don't want to do that. I commit to doing it better. Review the film with your kids, talk them through what's going on inside of you so that they understand and that they get good at taking ownership and acknowledging. And kids, I have learned, are so forgiving.
mm.
I mean, it's amazing how much grace kids will show you when you apologize. It's like, hey, that's all right, mommy. I forgive you, mommy. We all have our bad days. And it just creates a culture of humility and ownership. I think the best thing you can teach your kids is owning their stuff. And how
Mm.
can kids own their stuff if they never see anyone around them owning their stuff? Because parents are supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to have it all together. No, we're supposed to model ownership, and that's the key. And so do your work, and then when you go off tracks, own it,
Yeah.
be honest about it.
Yeah. I think that is something that our generation of parents is doing well, is taking a little more ownership and apologizing more and just saying, like, we're not perfect. We don't have it
Yeah,
all figured out and we're learning, which is such a gift to be able to give your kids. And like,
I know. It is
you don't have
such a
to,
gift.
as an adult, have it figured out. Like, you get
And
to keep learning.
when it comes to marriage, I think sometimes there's 2 types of parents. There's parents who just lay it all out in front of their kids, and then there's parents who don't want their kids to ever see them arguing.
Mm,
But what happens is sometimes kids will see their parents arguing, but they won't necessarily see the resolution,
mm, mhm.
or they'll never see their parents arguing because their parents don't let them. They do it all behind closed doors. But then kids can't see human emotion, human processing. I'm not saying your kids should be part of every conversation. Absolutely not.
Right.
But if you're going to start a conversation in front of them, you should also bring them into the resolution.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they have to be there for the whole thing, but if you started arguing in front of your kids, it's important to later go back and say, "Hey, I know you guys heard us arguing. Here's what mommy and daddy were, daddy, we weren't kind to each other. Daddy can take ownership, mommy can take ownership, and we apologize to each other. We love each other." Just so that kids see what resolution looks like,
Yeah.
healthy resolution. So even in that, there's so many opportunities to show emotional health, ownership, rupture, then repair, and just modeling all these things to our kids is so healthy.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, and it's so true, just to see the reconciliation, because I think we do hide that a little bit, mostly because it's like, "Ugh, you just wanna get it over with,"
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Or they go to bed, we
Yes.
resolve it, and then we wake up in the morning as if nothing happened, but they didn't see that part. Like, oh, everybody's
Right.
okay again.
Yeah, like, "I guess we're good. Today's a new
Right.
day." Yeah,
But it's
totally.
it's important because that's how they learn strategies. That's how, oh, okay,
Mhm.
both if you apologize for something, both of you took ownership. We don't have to make it a huge deal, but just know that repair happened and, hey, we brought you into the beginning of this. Let's also share with you the happy ending.
Yeah. Well, that sets them up for success in their own future relationships,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, can you tell us a little bit, like, where you, because you have a parent's guide with this book, right? So tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that, just to wrap up our time. Tell us about that and then where we can find everything so we can
Absolutely.
yeah.
So, this book comes with a parent's guide to helping your children with their feelings. And it has this really cool activity in there, something similar to what we talked about. It's a outline of a person and it gives you these instructions of how to talk your kids through coloring in that person with the different feelings. Each feeling has a different color. And after they've read through the book, they can really connect what each emotion is like, what it feels like, what to do with it, and then mapping it out in their body and having a conversation that gives you all the prompts to talk through your kids about all the different things they might be feeling. And you can do this on a regular basis. It could be an activity that you do or on a date with your kids. Like, hey, let's talk through how you're feeling and what's going on inside of you. It also gives you a lot of conversational prompts for having deeper conversations with your children about feelings, whether they're young or old, in every age and stage. It kind of gives you different prompts and just helps you generally overall to know how to begin navigating this conversation in a healthy way. It's like a spin wheel game that you'll get in the mail that has all the different emotions on it and a little spin wheel that you can then have on hand to show your kids to talk through what they're feeling, all the different things. And you can find all of that information at debrafileta.com/any day emotions. And my last name is spelled Fileta. So it's DebraFileta.com/any day emotions. The parents guide is there and all of the information to get the bonuses.
Yeah, and I'll put that all in show notes so that people can find it easily, because I think this is just a really helpful resource and it's really needed. So I appreciate you creating it and coming to share with us all about it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to getting this into your homes. And hopefully, with all the different things in nature linked to different emotions, kids can really just begin to absorb and remember what to do with their emotions, how to handle them, what they feel like, and learn to manage them in healthy ways.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Christian parenting.